He asked to meet the chef and the entire room froze. No one moved. No one spoke. Until a quiet kitchen helper, covered in flour and forgotten by everyone, stepped forward. What happened next shook the entire restaurant and changed the culinary world forever. She was never supposed to be seen. But that night she became a legend. Stay till the end because this story proves that greatness often hides in silence, until it rises. The chandelier above the grand dining hall shimmered like a crown of diamonds. Golden light danced on polished cutlery and porcelain plates. Laughter echoed across the marble walls, polished to a mirror-like shine. Waiters in crisp white uniforms moved like clockwork, silent and precise. Crystal glasses clinked with sparkling wine. A dozen dishes had been served, each more exquisite than the last. The guests praised every bite, nodding with approval. Then he cleared his throat. The man at the end of the long table. Gray-haired. Italian suit. Eyes like steel. He raised his hand slowly. "I would like to meet the chef," he said. A hush swept the room like a cold wind. Forks paused mid-air. A waiter dropped a spoon. The sommelier's hands trembled as he reached for a bottle. Silence thickened like heavy smoke. The maitre d', a tall man with polished shoes and perfect posture, stepped forward. His voice strained. "I will inform the kitchen." He turned and disappeared through the velvet curtain. The kitchen was a frenzy of motion until he walked in. Everyone froze. Chefs looked up from flaming pans. Steam hissed. Oil popped. Blades stopped chopping. He repeated the words. "He wants to meet the chef." No one moved. All eyes darted toward the stainless steel corner. To the woman with deep brown skin. Flour on her apron. Burn marks on her arms. Hair tucked beneath a plain bandana. She was not supposed to cook that night. She was not even a chef on paper. She cleaned. Washed. Prepped. But when the head chef stormed out 3 hours earlier, she stepped in. No one argued. They were desperate. She knew the recipes. She had watched for years. Tasted. Learned. Remembered. Now she stood still, eyes wide. Her heart pounded. Fingers curled into fists. The sous chef whispered. "He means you." She shook her head. "No. I am just—" "He asked to meet the chef," the maitre d' repeated, eyes pleading. She looked down at her shoes. Scuffed. She looked at her hands. Strong. Warm. She nodded. Slowly she wiped her hands on a towel. Walked past the stairs. Pushed through the curtain. And entered the dining hall. A gasp spread like fire. Guests turned. Some leaned back. Others squinted in disbelief. She stopped before the man. His eyes studied her. Head to toe. He said nothing for a moment. Then he smiled. It was not warm. It was not cruel. Just curious. "You are the chef?" She hesitated. "I made the food tonight." Another pause. "What is your name?" "Imani." He blinked. "You cooked every dish?" "Yes." He gestured to his plate. "This duck, this orange glaze. That was you." "Yes." "And the crab risotto?" "Yes." He reached for his wine. Sip. Put the glass down. Then stood. The room held its breath. He extended his hand. Firm. Steady. "Well then, Imani. You are a genius." No one moved. No one spoke. She stared at his hand. Then slowly placed hers in his. His grip was warm. Firm. Respectful. He turned to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced. "You have just been served by one of the finest chefs I have ever encountered." Murmurs turned to claps. Claps turned to cheers. The maitre d's jaw tightened. The executive chef, who had just returned, froze in the doorway. Imani stood motionless. Eyes wide. Chest rising. Every gaze now rested on her. For the first time in years she was seen. Not just as help. Not just as background. But as brilliance. As fire. As flavor. And as art. The applause swelled. She blinked back the burn in her eyes. A tear escaped. She smiled. Just a little. But it carried the weight of 1,000 quiet hours. 1,000 meals. 1,000 nights where no one noticed. Until now. She stepped back. Returned to the kitchen. And the door slowly closed behind her. But something had changed. And it would never go back. Inside the kitchen the noise returned. Pots clanged. Steam rose. Orders were shouted again. But something felt different. The silence that had wrapped around Imani like a second skin was gone. The sous chef stared. The pastry cook smiled. The dishwasher gave a small nod. Even the head chef, now standing awkwardly near the door, looked away. He said nothing. Because there was nothing he could say. Imani moved quietly back to her station. The towel in her hand trembled. She placed it down. Sat on the low wooden stool beside the dry storage. Her breathing was shallow. Her fingers pressed against her chest. Her heart was beating like war drums. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in years she felt something unfamiliar. Dignity. Not borrowed. Not begged. But earned. Not just in the food. But in being seen. Outside, the man, Mr. Callahan, walked back to his seat. He was a world-renowned food critic. His reviews could lift or bury a restaurant overnight. And his words carried power like thunder. He lifted his wine glass once more. Turned to the table of business investors beside him. His voice was calm but commanding. I came here tonight expecting precision. I found poetry. He leaned back in his chair. His silver cufflinks gleamed under the chandelier. I want the name of that woman in every newspaper. I want her story told. Someone whispered, but she is just a helper. He turned sharply. There is no just when greatness is involved. The manager of the restaurant appeared, sweat beading at his forehead. He stuttered as he approached the table. Mr. Callahan, we apologize, she was not meant to. Then thank your stars she did. She saved your restaurant. Now keep her name off the schedule as a helper. Because starting tomorrow she is the executive chef. His words echoed like a verdict. The table went quiet again. Then someone began to clap. Another followed. Then another. Within moments, the dining hall erupted in a standing ovation. They were not just applauding the meal anymore. They were applauding truth. They were applauding justice. They were applauding her. Back in the kitchen, Imani was still on that wooden stool. The maitre d' walked in. Eyes misted. Voice unsteady. You need to come out again. Imani frowned. Why? He held out a clean white coat. Crisp. Stiff. Brand new. She stared at it. Her name was stitched in fine black thread. Chef Imani Richards. Her hands trembled again. But not from fear. From rising. From becoming. She stood. Took the coat. Slipped her arms through it. It fit like it was always meant to. And then she walked. Past the flames. Past the stairs. Back into the dining hall. This time heads did not just turn. They bowed. As she walked between the tables, people reached out, offering hands, congratulations, admiration. But her eyes searched for just one face. Mr. Callahan stood tall, smiling softly. He nodded once, then raised his glass. To the chef who reminded us that talent has no uniform, that genius speaks softly, and that the soul of a dish lies not in its price, but in the hands that made it. The hall fell into reverent silence. Imani stood still in the center of the grand room. And then she smiled. A full, proud, glowing smile. Because this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The next morning, the city woke to a storm of headlines. Unknown kitchen helper stuns world-renowned food critic. Imani Richards, the secret genius behind last night's culinary miracle. A new chef rises from the shadows to the spotlight. Her photo spread across every screen. Every newspaper. Every food blog. Some called her the Cinderella of cuisine. Others called her the silent flame. But Imani? She just stood by the sink in her tiny one-room apartment, wearing the same worn slippers, holding her chipped tea mug, staring at the television in disbelief. The same woman who used to scrub the floor behind the chefs was now being invited to speak at culinary conferences. Offers poured in. TV interviews. Cookbook deals. Five-star restaurants in New York, Paris, and Cape Town wanted her name on their doors. But Imani said no. She returned to the same restaurant that never put her name on the roster. Because something inside her whispered, if I walk away now they win. Instead, she walked in wearing her chef coat, tied her apron, took her place behind the line, and began to build. The first night with her as executive chef was unlike anything the city had seen. The restaurant had a waitlist 3 months long. The staff worked with a new rhythm, one of quiet awe. Every dish was a piece of her. Flavors that told stories. Textures that carried memories. Plates that echoed her journey, sweet, bitter, burnt, reborn. But success draws not only praise. It draws envy. The former head chef returned days later. His pride shattered. His eyes cold. He stared across the kitchen at Imani. You stole my kitchen, he said. Imani kept chopping. Come. Precise. I stepped in when you walked out. He laughed bitterly. You think this applause will last? People will forget you. You are a trend. She looked up, her voice low, firm. Then let them forget. But I will still be here. I do not need fame to be fire. I need a flame to keep feeding my purpose. He scoffed and walked out again. This time no one stopped him, because they saw something in Imani they had never seen in him. Grace under fire. Power and humility. Weeks turned into months. Imani restructured the kitchen. She promoted dishwashers who had been invisible. She taught interns the way she had taught herself. She rewrote every menu not just with new recipes but with new names. Each dish was dedicated to the hands that made it. The line cook's pride. The pastry girl's dream. The janitor's midnight stew. Customers tasted something different in every bite. Not just spices, not just sauces, but soul. And the world kept coming. Food critics returned again and again. Some tried to find flaws. Some tried to uncover scandal. But there was none. Just a woman. In a white coat. Leading a team of overlooked brilliance. Every night before service she would gather the staff. No long speeches. Just one sentence. Tonight let them taste who we are. And they did. The city changed. The industry changed. And one night a young girl barely 15 approached Imani after dinner. She was shy. Her braids pulled tight. Eyes wide with hope. I want to cook like you, she whispered. Imani knelt down. Held her gaze. What do you love most? The girl hesitated. Then smiled. My grandma's rice. Imani nodded. Then start there. Cook what makes you feel strong. Everything else will come. That girl would later win a national cooking competition. Years later she would thank one woman in her speech. A woman who never chased cameras. Never played politics. Only fed people with her hands, her heart, and her truth. And as for Imani, she never left the kitchen. Because greatness does not always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears old shoes, burned hands, and the quiet pride of a woman who once stepped forward when no one else did. Years passed, but the kitchen never lost its rhythm. The clang of pans, the sizzle of oil, the quiet hum of teamwork. Imani still arrived first, still tied her apron the same way, still wrote each night's menu with the same care as a love letter. She had become a legend, but she never acted like one. Even as Food Networks begged for a reality show, even as global investors offered to build 10 restaurants in her name, she refused most offers. Not out of fear, but out of loyalty. Her kitchen was not built for show. It was built for soul. Until one day something changed. A black car pulled up outside the restaurant. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He was not there to eat. He was there on behalf of a global hospitality empire. He requested a private meeting. Inside the office he spoke clearly. Miss Richards, we want your name on a flagship restaurant in Dubai. All expenses covered. Unlimited staff. 7-figure salary. Michelin aspirations. She listened quietly. He placed a contract on the table. Thick, polished, tempting. Then he added, we will need to approve your team. We prefer to bring in our own. Her eyes shifted. Why? They have global experience. They match the brand. Her fingers tapped the wood. And my staff. The man smiled thinly. Some could stay. Others might not fit. She stood. Not abruptly, but with finality. Then she opened the door. Outside her team waited. Young. Brown. Black. Scarred. Hopeful. Every single one of them had once been passed over. But now they were part of something sacred. She looked the man in the eye. And said, if your dream does not have room for the people who made mine real, then I want no part of it. He frowned. Are you sure? She nodded. This kitchen is not built on ego. It is built on faith. He packed his papers. Left without a word. The door closed. Silence. Then applause erupted from the hallway. Her staff gathered around her. They knew what she had just given up. But they also knew what she had chosen to protect. A week later something unexpected happened. A handwritten letter arrived. No return address. Just a golden seal. Inside the note read, I heard what you said. I have never seen anyone turn down the world for the people who helped build theirs. I want to dine in your restaurant. No press. No guards. Just respect. Please save me a seat. JS. No one knew who JS was. Until a limousine arrived that Friday evening. A tall woman in a navy blue gown stepped out. Jewelry minimal. Ice kind. It was Julia Stone, the most powerful food investor in the world. She walked in without cameras. Sat at the smallest table. Ordered whatever the chef recommended. And when she finished, she asked only one question. May I see the kitchen? Imani came out apron stained. She wiped her hands, nervous. Julia smiled. You built this. I have built empires, Chef Richards. But none with the kind of heart I tasted tonight. I want to invest. But not in your name. In your people. In your system. In your story. Imani stared at her. What does that mean? Julia leaned forward. It means you will stay right here. But we will help people like you across the world. Kitchens run by the invisible. Meals made by the unheard. We will bring light to every shadowed corner. Not to lift you alone, but to lift those who remind us that greatness is often buried beneath silence. Imani's throat tightened. She extended her hand. Julia shook it. That was the beginning. Not of a franchise, but a movement. A culinary revolution. Where every forgotten kitchen helper had a name. A place. A future. Imani stayed in her kitchen. But her legacy spread. To Harlem. To Soweto. To Karachi. To Kingston. Places where dreams once simmered in darkness. Now they blazed. And every dish that carried her spirit, carried a simple message. You are not invisible. You are not small. You are not just anything. You are the flavor the world forgot it needed. And someone somewhere will taste your fire. 10 years later, a new name echoed through the culinary world. Maya Ellis. 25. Sharp eyes. Steady hands. Born and raised in a neighborhood where fast food was cheaper than fresh fruit. Raised by a mother who worked 3 jobs. Taught herself to cook by watching Imani's interviews late at night on a borrowed phone. Her dream had always been clear. I want to cook like her. Not just the flavors, but the fire. She applied to every culinary school. Rejected. Too expensive. No scholarships. Too little experience. But one letter changed everything. It was handwritten. Short. And powerful. Come work in my kitchen. I will teach you what schools cannot. IR. Maya packed her things. Left home. And arrived at the restaurant that had become a legend. Imani's kitchen. Inside nothing had changed. The walls were still warm terracotta. The stove still hummed. The air still carried garlic, rosemary, ambition. But Maya? She was overwhelmed. Every step felt sacred. Every eye on her felt like a challenge. She stumbled on her first night. Dropped a saucepan. Burned a roux. Cut her finger. But Imani said nothing. She simply handed her a towel. And whispered, "You will not learn this in a classroom." Weeks became months. Maya watched. Listened. Learned. Imani taught her how to taste with memory. How to plate with story. How to lead without shouting. One night, Imani stood behind her as she prepared a lamb dish. Maya's hands trembled slightly. Imani placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are ready." Maya looked up. Ready for what? To take the lead tomorrow. Maya froze. The restaurant was hosting foreign diplomats. Food critics. Even a former prime minister. "I am not ready." Imani's voice was calm. "You are never ready when the moment first arrives. But the moment is ready for you." That night, Maya barely slept. She woke before sunrise. Reviewed every recipe. Every technique. She tied her hair back. Slipped into her chef coat. And walked into the kitchen. Everyone stared. She was the youngest in the room. But when she gave her first order, they moved. Not because of her age, but because of her preparation. The night began. Plates moved. Flavors danced. She commanded the kitchen like music. Until, a mistake. A sauce too bitter. A steak overdone. 2 wrong plates in a row. Maya's breath quickened. Panic crept in. The rhythm faltered. And then the door opened. In walked the evening's most powerful guest. He asked the maitre d' a single question. "I want to meet the chef." The room went still. Just like 10 years ago. Every head turned. Maya's lips parted. But she could not move. Her mind screamed. "You failed. You messed up. You do not belong." Then she felt it. A hand on her back. Imani stood behind her. Not in front of her. Not shielding her. Supporting her. She whispered. "The first time they asked for me, I nearly ran. But I walked instead. So will you." Maya turned. Walked toward the dining hall. Every step was fire and ice. The grand room opened before her. The man stood. Tall. White beard. Elegant suit. His eyes surprised. "You are the chef?" Maya nodded. "I am." He gestured to his plate. "This risotto. It tastes like grief and hope in one bite." She exhaled. That was exactly what she had felt when she made it. He extended his hand. "Thank you, Chef Ellis." The crowd applauded. Slowly. Then louder. The staff in the kitchen leaned forward. Some smiled. Some cheered. Back in the hallway, Imani watched. Her eyes misted. But her smile was full. Because legacy is not built in recipes. It is built in courage passed down. In hands held. In shoulders touched. In moments when fear meets fire. And bows to it. Maya returned to the kitchen. Eyes burning. Smile trembling. Imani stepped forward. From now on, she said, this kitchen is yours. Maya froze. No, wait, what do you mean? Imani untied her apron. Folded it once. Twice. Laid it on the counter. I am opening a new school. Not for fame. Not for tourists. But for girls who think they do not belong in rooms like this. You belong, Maya. You always have. Then she turned. And walked out. No cameras. No farewell party. Just one woman passing the torch. To another. And somewhere miles away. In a small kitchen with cracked tiles. A teenage girl was watching the whole story online. She paused the video. Whispered, I want to cook like her. And somewhere deep in the heat of a kitchen, a new fire was born. Years later, a quiet hilltop on the edge of the city stood draped in sunlight. The trees swayed gently. Their leaves whispered stories only the wind could carry. And at the center of the hill, a modest building stood. Stone walls. Wide windows. A bronze plaque above the door read, the Imani Richards Institute for Culinary Hope. Inside, the halls buzzed not with noise, but with purpose. Young chefs moved with passion in their hands and power in their eyes. They came from everywhere. From corners of the world where dreams were often buried under hunger, poverty, or silence. But here, their stories became ingredients. Their pain became flavor. And their voices found heat. At the front of the largest classroom hung a single black and white photograph. It showed Imani. Not in her chef coat, but in her original kitchen apron. Flour smudged across her cheek. A quiet smile on her lips. The caption below read, Seen at last. In the back of that room, Maya Ellis stood tall. Now a mentor. A teacher. A leader. She had kept the kitchen running. But now she had chosen a path beyond service. She was lighting new flames. Teaching not just technique, but resilience, dignity, self-worth. One afternoon, as she stood before a group of new students, she paused. They watched her. Waiting. She held up a worn-out wooden spoon. Its handle cracked. Its edge darkened by time. This, she said softly, belonged to Imani. She used it long before she had silver knives or marble counters. She stirred soup with this when no one remembered her name. She held this when she first believed her hands had value. The room fell silent. Then she placed the spoon in a glass case by the door. Beside it she added a small card. Flames do not choose where they start, but they choose who they feed. Be someone's fire. As dusk fell, Maya walked outside. The city below shimmered. Restaurants bustled. Menus bore the names of chefs who once washed dishes in silence. TV screens showed girls in aprons taking center stage. Food festivals named after the helpers once forgotten. And deep in the heart of it all, the soft echo of Imani's legacy lived on. Not in headlines. Not in trophies, but in every hand that stirred with love, every voice that refused to stay silent, and every soul that stepped forward when the world expected them to stay back. Back on the hilltop, Maya sat on a bench beneath the old olive tree. She looked up at the stars and whispered, Thank you. The wind rustled the leaves above her, almost like a reply, almost like the fire itself, answering. Because in every kitchen lit by Imani's spark, the flame never died. It only passed on, one hand at a time.